I know. Change.
Information.
What's wrong?
Good morning, everyone. We will call the October 4th, 2021 meeting to order. We're going to start with the swearing in of new officers. And as I told the audience before, if you'd like to come take pictures of your loved ones, you're welcome to come from either side behind us. All I ask is that you just throw a mask on. So if I could have the officers come forward. We have Daniel Bieber, Azine Sarkash, Christian Rodriguez, Matthew Bremis, Samuel Gaston, Cole Klein, Jonathan Vangeli, and Robert Merck. Deputy Chief.
Mayor, Council, good morning. Deputy Chief Eric Andy. I'm going to introduce our new recruits from left to right for the swearing in. Daniel Bieber holds a bachelor's degree from Penn State. Daniel has prior law enforcement experience with the Montgomery County Police Department, Maryland, and the Pinellas Park Police Department. Matthew Bremis holds a bachelor's degree from St. Anselm College. Matthew has prior law enforcement experience with the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. Samuel Gaston grew up in Tampa and holds a bachelor's degree from USF. Cole Klein holds an associate degree from Illinois State College. Prior to relocating to Florida, Cole was a police officer with the Peoria Police Department. Tyler Merck holds a master's degree from Florida State. He also serves as a captain in the United States Army. Tyler was an intern with CPD prior to attending the police academy. Christian Rodriguez holds an associate's degree from Westchester Community College. Prior to relocating to Florida, Christian was a police officer with NYPD. Azine Sarkash holds a master's degree from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Prior to relocating to Florida, Azine was a police officer with Chicago PD. Jonathan Vangeli holds a bachelor's degree from Florida State. Jonathan served as an intern with CPD and was a police officer with the Treasure Island Police Department.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. And now we'll have the city clerk swear all of you in.
I state your name. Do solemnly swear. That I will support, protect, and defend. The Constitution and government. Of the United States. And the state of Florida. And the charter and laws. Of the city of Clearwater. That I am duly qualified. To hold office. Under the charter and laws. Of the city of Clearwater. And that I will. Well and faithfully. Perform the duties. Of a police officer. On which I'm now about to enter. Congratulations.
Be safe.
Welcome. Thanks.
Congratulations. Be safe.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Take care.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Be safe. Congratulations. Glad to have you. Congratulations. Congratulations. Be safe out there. Congratulations. I'm from Chicago. Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Well, we wish all of our new recruits a wonderful career here at CPD and a safe career. And I also want to thank all the family members for coming out. Being a first responder, it's often difficult to be a family member, and we often don't thank you enough for having your family member out there on the streets protecting all of us. So thank you very much, and God bless you. Next, we have Economic Development and Housing, item 3.1.
Provide direction for the evaluation, development, and implementation of a small business enterprise program for the procurement of goods, services, and construction. Ms. Sanderson.
Thank you. Denise Sanderson, Economic Development and Housing. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Welcome back.
Thank you.
This item is seeking direction to take the first steps in the evaluation, development, and implementation of a small business enterprise program for the procurement of goods and services, including consultants, and construction for the city of Clearwater. Over the summer, I met with each of you, along with Owen Kohler, who is our lead assistant city attorney, Lori Vogel, who's procurement manager, and Dr. Cynthia Johnson. At that time, she was center director for the Small Business and Supplier Diversity program. She is today's economic development director for Pinellas County. We discussed the merits of the county's program to support the utilization of area small businesses for county procurement and how those practices might be implemented for the city of Clearwater. Our recommendation is to hire a consultant who has experience in developing these kinds of programs with local governments, and because the implementation of a program will have some one-time and ongoing costs, we recommend 3 phases to this consultant's work. After the evaluation phase, staff will return with an analysis of what those one-time and ongoing costs may be. Because these are non-budgeted for this fiscal year, it's important that council weigh in on the further development of that program, including the implementation, which will likely occur beginning fiscal year next year of 22-23. Should council provide this direction today, you would also be amending direction previously given at the April 12th work session. And finally, as noted in your agenda memo, funding for a consultant's work is not in the FY 21-22 budget that you just approved. It is to be provided in a first quarter budget amendment, and it will be allocated for $50,000 for consulting services. Happy to take any questions. Both Owen Kohler and Lori Vogel are here as well. Should you have any questions of them?
Questions for staff? Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, so on our notes we have, on April 12th, we gave direction for an RFP for a consultant firm to conduct a disparity study. So what happened between then and now that now we're recommending a consultant, for a different purpose?
So a disparity study is a highly expensive endeavor when you don't have great information. And one of the reasons for making this recommendation today is it will give us the opportunity to develop that information over a minimum of 3-year period, which is what I would recommend that we implement before considering going out for a disparity study. One of the great challenges, I don't wish to speak for Mr. Kohler, so I'll ask him to jump in if he wishes to do so, but a disparity study is the legal requirement necessary to implement a women and minority business enterprise program. And in order to do so, it requires site visits and confirmations and certifications of the vendors that we're utilizing. It's a highly expensive endeavor when you do not have that information already on file. So by developing an SBE program, we would gather that information, albeit through self-attestation, and that would be helpful in the use of a disparity study if it were to occur down the road.
So, but didn't we know that information in April, that it was going to be real expensive and long going? So I'm just a little frustrated that it's been 6 months and now we're talking about this, which I'm fine with, the small business enterprise kind of program for Clearwater, but it's like, and now you're talking about a 3-year time frame.
If you'll recall, one of the things that we talked about in our one-on-ones was what problem is it that we're trying to solve. And so one of the challenges in implementing a Weeby-Meeby program, and forgive me for the acronym there, but one of the challenges in having one of those programs that are backed up by a disparity study is that you're supporting businesses of all sizes, albeit for women or minority-owned businesses. And I would contend that one of the problems that we're wishing to solve, I believe, is what I heard from council members, is the capacity of our smallest enterprises. Do they have capacity to conduct work with the city of Clearwater and other governments, which is what we would encourage them to do? So I think in taking this approach, we're both building the capacity of those small business enterprises as well as encouraging engagement from maybe Weeby and other disadvantaged business enterprises. And I think in doing so, one will have hopefully, great relationships with these small businesses and can begin to assist them in other ways through our partnerships with Clearwater Business Spark Partners as an example. And we'll get to a point, hopefully, where this is the way that we conduct business, right? That we're going to be working with these organizations that would be inclusive or included within a sheltered market. They would be small business enterprises. They would be women, minority, and other disadvantaged business enterprises. And, we'll give those other opportunity, those bid opportunities, if we follow a program similar to the counties where they would engage with us through the sheltered market, a rather protected bid opportunity for those enterprises. So I think I don't believe that there's a perfect system. I believe there's a balance. So we would need to understand, are we willing to commit additional resources, and it is an intensely difficult program to certify and monitor women, minority, and other disadvantaged businesses? Or are we willing to support the development of these enterprises and in 3 years take a look at where we are? How far have we come?
I get that. I mean, that makes sense. So the county already has a small business enterprise program, right?
They do.
So do we need to spend a whole bunch of money and time? Can we just pattern it off of there, scale it down? That's, one question. Number two, recently, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the Tampa Bay Times had the article about St. Pete's diversity study, and, they earned an F, is what they said. So I can't imagine ours is any better. I mean, so putting money into that kind of a study, I'm okay with. When we approved the RFP in April, I'm thinking our results aren't going to come back looking, a rosy picture. But what I would like to know is, what can we do right now that is moving, getting us more information quickly? And one of the things we talked about in our meeting with Dr. Johnson was to have these optional questions on our business tax receipts, optional demographic questions. Can we start that like right now and have some phrasing in there with the city of Clearwater with the intention of, improving their diversity contracts, the diversity of their contracts? We're asking for this optional information. Can we start that? Because I think Dr. Johnson said they had some kind of questions on theirs. And I reached out to her to get that, and I think it was a busy time with her promotion and all that. But, what can we do right now to get a handle on some of that information?
I would defer to Gina if she's not here.
She's not here.
I would imagine that we could add that to the BTR, but recall that the sheltered market, particularly with the CCNA, it reflects the CCNA sheltered market, if you will. It is a 4-county region. And there's a reason for that it's a broader than just Pinellas County. One, we encourage small businesses to do business throughout the entire region. I really don't wish them to put all of their eggs in our basket, and I believe the county would say the same. So while it would be important to gather information of city resident businesses or those currently doing business within the city of Clearwater, it would not in any way, shape, or form gather the larger sheltered market information that I think we would want.
I agree with that too. But one of the conversation points I had with Dr. Johnson as well was perhaps we could, and she thought perhaps we could, in conjunction with the county, have sort of a common application that these small businesses could fill out and put on file to work with those multiple counties around us. And she said, yeah, that had been talked about a number of years ago, and she thought that possibly it's time to start talking about that again, to help these small businesses not have to jump through multiple municipal hoops. And I think that would be a great thing if Clearwater could lead the charge on that. And I know everybody's, maxed out with workload, but in conjunction with the county, that might be something to, to bring forward to help these small businesses who have multiple hoops to jump through for all these different municipalities.
So I think the hoops that you're referring to, I'll explain that right now in the B2G, which is Business to Government Now software, which is being widely utilized by numerous governmental and quasi-governmental organizations who have adopted similar programs. They're registering these businesses in that software, and they're sharing that data amongst the many partners. So, and throughout this 4-county region. And that program is a registration and self-attestation, if you will, of business type. Do they meet these qualifications? I think the hoops that you're referring to, though, is within each municipality or quasi-government or county or quasi-governmental entity, they have different rules, right? So for instance, the counties To be a part of the sheltered market program, and I'll use goods and services metrics, it's for all of those bids between 5,000 and 100,000. I suspect that the city of Clearwater will have a lower threshold, 2,500 to 50,000, because we don't buy in those types of quantities perhaps that the county may. So I think there are some hoops. I think additionally, there's going to be different insurance requirements. We have different risk tolerances. I don't know that we're ever going to come to consensus on some of those things. One of the questions that is to be posed to this consultant is to look at all of those programs in the community, and or throughout the region rather, if it makes sense for us to streamline or adopt similar programs or guidelines, I think that's really important to do so. I think clarity and predictability is essential in any kind of business. So it's something that we could look at. I think it might be a little bit too optimistic to think that we're all going to be able to come to consensus. Every government, as you know, has different rules, procurement rules. So I don't anticipate that we'll be changing rules in other organizations.
Right. I get, like, not the whole Common App, but, maybe a baseline of getting a first look after, I don't know, something to make it easier.
And ultimately, that is the goal, of course, right?
Right. And I would hope that every municipality wants wants the contracts that we award to reflect the demographics of our communities as much as possible.
I would agree.
So in April, when we gave direction for the RFP, I don't know that we had a real timeline articulated then. So if we're giving direction today to hire this consultant, what kind of a timeline can you share with us?
I will ask Lori or Owen to address that. I can tell you that we can issue what is known as an informal RFP because of the anticipated consultant dollar amount. What the time frame is a question for Lori.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lori. I'm the procurement manager for the city. As far as the timeline goes, as long as the dollar amount is under $50,000, we can do it within a 2-week time frame to put an informal RFQ out, or RFP out there to see what interested parties would be able to engage in the small business enterprise program, and then from there we can select the firm and move forward.
So where was the number 50,000 even derived?
I contacted the consultant who worked with Pinellas County. That contract has expired, and so we're unable to piggyback. But I did talk with him at length about what would be required for doing such a program here within the city, and I asked him to ballpark it for me as to that dollar amount. We feel quite comfortable it will come in under $50,000.
When I was thinking about the timeline, though, I was thinking, like, what are the deliverables? What can we expect if we contract with somebody within the next 2 months? What's going to happen that we're going to see the needle move or some kind of action?
Share with me. So within the agenda item, it kind of details what the first phases would be, or the first phase would be.
Yep.
So we would imagine that there would be an internal review in this written analysis of what we're currently doing, and then make recommendations for what those best practices would be. If we end up with a consultant who has done this program in this region, I would imagine that information is fairly quickly assembled. I think the really important component is having those engagement or listening sessions with our local businesses to hear what have been their challenges in working with the city of Clearwater. And for those that are currently working with the city of Clearwater, what are those opportunities as well? And then, of course, there's the evaluation of what it would take to implement a program, and that would be personnel and other ongoing costs. I would imagine that phase 1 is going to take probably, I would imagine maybe 3 months. With the holidays coming up, it's a little bit challenging to get those listening sessions scheduled and to have effective representative discussions in the community. So I would anticipate it would probably be a 3-month process for the first phase. And then we'll come back to you and request budgetary approval to move forward with development and then implementation. Implementation, as I said, I would anticipate would be by October of next year. There's a lot of pieces that would be required in the development phase in order to prepare for that.
So implementation a year from now.
That would be my guess. Whether that could happen ahead of that, I do not know.
Mr. Maxwell.
Councilmember, this is Denise's best guess on this. When we get the consultant's report back after we do the RFP, we'll know a lot better what the timelines are going to be. Denise is doing her best here to give us some timelines, but it's going to depend on the consultant to some level too. So we're just going to have to see what we get in the responses.
So this is for phase 1. Do we have any anticipation of what phase 2 and 3 will cost?
This is, the $50,000 would include the entire consulting process, phases 1 through 3.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Comfortable giving direction to staff to go forward?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sanderson. 4.1.
Approved a contract with Complete Property Services LLC of Tampa, Florida to perform structural repairs and refinishing services at Baycare Ballpark in an amount not to exceed $356,407.70 pursuant to invitation to bid 20-0036-EN-A Baycare Ballpark Structural Repairs 2021 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Halios.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Jim Halios, Director of Parks and Recreation. The item we have before you this morning is for structural repairs at Baycare Ballpark. As part of our agreement with the Phillies for the lease of Baycare Ballpark, we do an annual engineering report, and that engineering report identifies any deficiencies or items in the building that need to be addressed or replaced. As the building has aged, it's close to 20 years, you'll see that a lot of the work here is recaulking, sealing, expansion joints, and stairway areas, refinishing of concrete, things of that nature that are just wear and tear items that occur over the useful life of the stadium. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Halios? Vice Mayor?
Not a question as much as it doesn't seem like it's been almost 20 years since I tumbled through Jack Russell.
Yeah.
But, it's, I mean, this is the cost of maintaining a structure of this type. I mean, this is normal wear and tear and time events really is what it is. None of this is, there's no structural issues. It's
No,
just.
it's actually to prevent further structural issues. You know, a lot of that, the waterproofing, the sealing, the expansion joints, if that's not addressed in a timely manner, the membrane can leak, and then you have much larger issues for repair items on your hands.
This is an ounce of prevention.
Yep.
Councilmember Beckman.
I found it interesting that we had only one Clearwater bid, and we have a bid from Minnesota and one from Kentucky for this work. That seemed kind of interesting to me.
Well, again, it could speak to, you know, the level of work that people here in Florida are getting versus the level of work people in other, you know, states are getting as far as, I think we all know with materials and just work in general, getting people out, it's very difficult. So, you know, I think people, hopefully they're responsible and they bid the work they can do. So, you know, that would be my answer to that.
Well, there's also a big difference. You know, Minnesota, they actually do construction for about 6 months.
True.
And then a lot of the state shuts down in many ways. So that's could be the reason.
The other comment I had is, so in the description of the work, you know, not that I've done a lot of concrete work, but it doesn't sound too complex. And I noticed that we have a disadvantaged business enterprise in that tab, the bid tab. There is one, they're from Kentucky, but, you know, the only reason that's indicated there is if there's some sort of a tie, and then we would award it to a disadvantaged business enterprise. Is that right?
I'd have to defer to our purchasing manager.
Okay.
But
I mean-
the answer is yes, that is our tiebreaker.
Okay, right. So I mean, just to tie in with our previous agenda item about trying to get more smaller businesses, diverse businesses, but it's just hard to break in if that's the parameter. It has to be a tie.
Well, but you also have to look at the disadvantaged business you're referring to, their bid was almost $200,000 more than the other. That's a significant number.
Well, and they're coming from Kentucky, right? Aren't they the ones from? Okay.
Other questions? Consent?
Yes.
5.1. Thank you, Mr. Hallius.
Approve a purchase order to Dana Safety Supply, Inc. of Greensboro, North Carolina to purchase 25 Sig Sauer MCX rifles, 25 Sig Sauer SLX suppressors, 25 Sig Sauer Romeo sighting devices, and associated equipment in an amount not to exceed $99,711 pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.5631D. Impractical, declare 23 HK 416D rifles, 24 Surefire suppressors, and 30 EOTech XPS-2 sighting systems surplus, and approve the trade-in in the amount of $92,350 pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.637E, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Deputy Chief Gandy.
Mayor, Council, Deputy Chief Eric Gandy, Clover Pleady. So we've had the primary shoulder-fired weapon for the SWAT team for the last 14 years. Over the last couple of years, we've identified the need to replace that weapon system. Several years ago, based on some noise issues related to the range and to protect the hearing of our officers, we investigated the use of suppressors or silencers, as they're commonly known, for that weapons platform. It wasn't really designed to work with a silencer as it's currently configured, so we started to see some malfunction problems and some issues with it. So based on that, the system served us well, but it's time to replace that system. The SWAT team spent months looking at a bunch of different options to replace that primary shoulder-fired weapon, and they've reached the conclusion that the Sig Sauer MCX is the proper replacement for that rifle. I will clarify in this item a couple things. If you read through, you noted that they referred to the trade-in value for the rifle as a whole. We're actually not trading in the entire rifle. It's just the barrel assembly, which is called an upper barrel, and then the bolt and bolt carrier. Based on supply and demand and scarcity, those have significant value, and the vendor did not want the lower receiver, which is actually what is qualified as the automatic weapon. So we're going to make arrangements with ATF once we have approval for the removal from service. Then we'll work with ATF to destroy those properly. The other item in here for clarification purposes is an ammunition purchase. While it didn't have to go through council, it's a proprietary ammunition for this weapon system for Sig Sauer, so we wanted to give you a full picture of what this transition would cost, because as you noted, the difference between our existing platform and the new one is a mere $7,361, wherein the ammunition is $49,000. I'll be glad to answer any questions related to either of these two systems.
Any questions for Chief Gandy? Councilmember Albritton.
I think you know what I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
Is this, these rifles chambered for 300 blackout? Is that what it is?
That's correct. It allows us, so the new rifles have a much shorter barrel, and when you incorporate a silencer or suppressor, which they're designed to operate with, it's a much smaller configuration, and they are chambered in 300 blackout, which allows us to shoot subsonic rounds,
Yes.
which also addresses some of the noise, and it has significant performance advantages over what we're using now.
So they're classified really as an SBR, right?
Yeah, they're ultimately...
Do you want to speak English?
Yeah.
A short barrel rifle.
Thank you.
It's a short barrel rifle. It's about a 6-inch barrel, and along with the suppressors, significantly shorter than what we use now. And for the SWAT team's purposes, we have to have a tool that, a rifle system that can essentially operate in several environments. Internally during search warrants, we have to move around corners, and then external for perimeter and containment, you need some standoff distance. So it fits in that spot. In my time with the team in various capacities, we've been through 3. And this last H&K lasted us 14 years. So we got good track record with it, but it's time to transition.
Other questions? Consent?
Yep.
6.1. Thank you, Chief.
Approve the request from the owner of property addressed as 2975 Gulf Bay Boulevard, Clearwater, to vacate a portion of Rogers Street right-of-way described as that certain portion of Rogers Street lying west of the east boundaries of lots 2 and 17, W.M. Brown's subdivision of Bayview, Florida, per map or plat thereof as recorded in Plat Book 1, page 13 of the Public Records of Hillsborough County, of which Pinellas was formerly a part of, and east of that portion of said Rogers Street vacated per Resolution 6918 as recorded in Official Records Book 3095, page 79 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, and that portion of Rogers Street conveyed to the City of Clearwater by deed recorded in Official Records Book 6302, page 1729 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, and pass Ordinance 9507-21 on first reading. Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you, Tom Mahoney, Engineering Department. This right-of-way vacation is for the future development of apartment homes, proposed apartment homes. The city will retain a utility easement for existing and proposed utilities. Staff has reviewed this request and we're recommending approval of this item. Have to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mahoney?
No. This-
All right. 6.2.
Approve a purchase order to Pinellas County Solid Waste Management for the disposal of solid waste at the Pinellas County landfill for a not-to-exceed amount of $689,000 for the term October 1, 2021 through September 30, 2026, pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.5631A, single source, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Mayak.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. I'm Melvin Machowick, Stormwater Maintenance Manager with the Engineering Department. The Stormwater Maintenance Department, we remove debris and sediment from the pipes, storm system, and we sweep the streets. We have to dispose of that material, and this is the only place in the county to do it.
Any questions? Consent?
Yep.
Thank you. 7.1.
Approve the Pinellas County Technical Rescue Team Agreement 2021 with Pinellas County and the City of Clearwater for a 5-year term through September 30, 2026, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Chief Ellers.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Scott Ellis, Fire Chief, Clearwater Fire and Rescue. This item before you is to request approval for the interlocal agreement with Pinellas County to provide specialized rescue services in the form of the Pinellas County Technical Rescue Team. Along with Largo, Pinellas Park, and St. Petersburg, this team provides technical rope rescue, includes confined space, high-angle rope, trench, complex vehicle and machinery, and structural collapse throughout the county. Since our involvement, Clearwater Fire Rescue members have utilized their training and resources for various specialized rescues right here in the city, to include rope rescues from workers off of beach high-rise buildings during their construction, utility workers trapped in trenches, numerous citizens and vehicles accidents with buildings, and actually 2 young girls, one trapped in a chimney and one trapped under concrete pipes. This agreement is for 5 years, commencing on October 1st, 2021, which includes additional funding to provide structural collapse training for all the members, as well as vehicle and machinery extrication. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chief Ellers? Well, we hope we don't need them.
Yes.
So, but it's good to have. Consent?
Yes.
All right, 8.1.
Approve purchase orders to multiple vendors for the acquisition of library books and materials in the cumulative not-to-exceed amount of $487,000 for the term October 1, 2021 through October 30, 2022, pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.5631D, piggyback, and cooperative purchases in Section 2.5631L, copyrighted materials, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. as Potters.
Morning, Bonnie Potters. I'm the acquisitions lead librarian for the library system. The library would like to request approval for the library's 3 largest material vendors for the upcoming fiscal year. The amount requested is $487,000 to provide materials for all Clearwater Library branches. With the funding, the library would purchase a wide variety of popular materials for the public. The funding would also provide electronic access to Overdrive, Loop Canopy, and Frigo platforms. These applications allow Clearwater patrons access to ebooks, downloadable movies, audiobooks from their home or through their mobile devices. We also would purchase children's books, graphic novels. The funding also provides for the latest Blu-ray and DVD movie releases, electronic games, audiobooks, and CD music. We would also purchase additional formats such as large print books, Spanish language materials, magazines, newspapers, reference databases, special collections, and Clearwater local history materials. We are members of the Mid-Atlantic Library Alliance, and we do receive substantial purchase discounts through the Alliance. MALIA is a consortium of 246 libraries in the Mid-Atlantic region, and many of our contracts are through the Alliance.
Questions? You may not have this at your fingertips. What is the percentage now between people that are taking out physical materials versus electronically? Do you know that?
I don't have a percentage, but I can tell you that since COVID, there's been a big increase in electronic demand. A lot of people still are not comfortable coming into a library. They're coming through our drive-thrus, not only at Clearwater, Countryside, at East Library we have drive-thrus. They're utilizing those quite often. We have increased our electronic funding. We've taken from the print material budget. When COVID first started, we immediately moved $60,000 from print to electronic to anticipate that we would be closed or might have to be closed, and we would still provide access to people that needed it during that time. And we continued that with this year, because we still see, even though people are coming back into the libraries, it's not to the level it was before COVID. So we have still diverted print material budgets heavily into electronic to anticipate that people still are not comfortable yet coming into buildings and hanging out and enjoying the libraries.
Councilmember Albritton.
You know, libraries have changed so much in the last 10 years. And when I talk to people about our libraries, and they're just amazed that what's available here to do. I mean, and they're like, really? I didn't know. Like, for instance, the fourth floor here where you can bring media in and have that transferred from like 8mm to to digital. And then people really can't believe that you rent power tools. I mean, it's like, really? The library does that now?
We're looking at trying to provide different ways that we can help and support the public. Preservation of history has always been within the wheelhouse of libraries. Certainly we're doing that here upstairs on the fourth floor. Providing things for people that don't have the ability to go out and purchase, where they need something for just one time. That's a new concept with Thingaberry Libraries and our collection that we started to grow about 2 years ago. And that's been very popular with the games and the power tools and things that people can just come in and utilize for one time and may not have to purchase that. So we're always looking at trying to provide things for the public that might be disadvantaged and not be able to afford that.
Other questions? Consent?
Yep.
Thank you.
8.2.
Declare library materials surplus and authorize donation to designated local not-for-profit organizations pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.6237D, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Stoner.
Hello, I'm David Stoner, Library Division Manager. The library is asking permission to donate discarded books valued at more than $5,000 to local nonprofit organizations pre-approved by City Council last year. They include AMVETS, HEP, Hospice, and Salvation Army. The materials are a carryover from last year's weeding project during renovation preparation, in addition to our regular collection maintenance this year. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have it.
Any questions? Ms. Aiken, do I need to recuse myself because of my relationship with Salvation Army through my wife?
They are one of the organizations we're donating to,
That's
but
correct.
one of how many?
Four.
Four. I don't think that is a sufficient connection, particularly since it's donation of books.
Just
We're
won't
not
ask.
giving them cash. No, so I think.
I want you to say no, and then.
No.
Emphatically.
All right. Consent?
Yes.
Yep.
9.1. Thank you, Mr. Stoner.
Approve a professional services agreement and design work order with Moffitt and Nickel, Inc. of Tampa, Florida, per request for qualifications 24-21 for replacement of the Clearwater Beach Marina 21-0008 MA in the amount of $1,484,174.50, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Chesney.
Good morning, Ed Chesney, Marine and Aviation. I'm going to put this up here so we can talk from it, but this is a project that we've been talking about for 15 years, so I'm very happy to bring it to you today, and there's a lot of work involved in what we're going to discuss today, and with the help of engineering and procurement, we have put out an RFQ, and we have selected a design team. And what we're doing here, this is a design team that's not just going to design something, it's going to also permit it. So at the end of this process, we're going to have permits in hand to actually reconstruct the marina. So I brought this figure here today because, you know, I was really thinking about this site, and this is the marina building here where I work and manages the marina. That building was built in 1952, and the marina was there beforehand. So I think this is arguably one of the oldest facilities currently operating in the same location, and really the beach grew around this marina, so it's very timely that we do something with it. And what we look at today has been built over time several times. This is not the 1950s docks that are out there, but they're the 1970s docks, and boats have changed over the years. A lot of the original slips were for sailboats, and we don't have that many sailboats anymore. So boats are wider, bigger. We've taken 2 slips, turned them into 1. There's a lot of wasted space out there. So we're really looking at building a state-of-the-art marina that will be here for a long time, just as we did with the downtown marina. A lot of things have happened on this property over the years. There's a lot of utilities that run along the seawall, which we need to address. So this work order is not just for the marine design that will work on the docks, design the docks through wind and wave studies. We're also going to do the utilities, water, sewer, electric, to support the facility. We've got 1,500 feet of seawall that'll have to be addressed. We've done a lot of work over the last several years, seawall studies. I've done electric service studies. I've done depth studies, submerged land lease studies. So there's a lot of things that we did to support this marina. So with this will be a year-long endeavor. So if approved this week, we'll award the contract to Moffitt and Nickel at roughly about 30% design. At that time, we're going to know what the footprint will look like, and then we'll start designing how we're going to construct it in phases. We're going to bring on a CM at risk manager to help us with that, and then we'll start costing it because we have a budget of a defined amount right now, and I don't want to design something we can't build. So we will do that early on, and this time next year, I hope that we will be bringing you a construction work order. So with that, I'll take questions. There's a lot of questions I'm sure you might have, but I'll try to answer them.
Councilmember Albritton.
Is the footprint bigger than the existing one that we have now?
It can be.
Until we get the design, you won't really know. Okay.
Yes, the city, one of the unique things at this site is we own the bottomlands. So what that means is we can build to the limits of what we own without getting a submerged land lease application and permit. So we're going to try to do that. I don't think we can get and build much bigger than our footprint because then we start impeding on what's to the south of us. But yes, we can get bigger.
Is this scheduled the construction to happen in 23?
23, yes. That's when the monies are available.
Okay.
So we'll start construction in 22 on the utility portions, similar to what we did downtown. So we'll have the utilities in the ground at the seawall for the start of the 23 construction.
Are you still planning on having gas docks?
Yes. Yes, we are. And that'll be, that's not a concern, but that's going to be a big part of this because we have that fuel dock sitting out there, and that's a major asset. So we need to preserve that, and we may build around it, we may rebuild it in its same location, but I don't know exactly how that's going to look yet, but I'm suspecting that that's going to control a lot of the design.
Well, I'm going to give a report Thursday night regarding Fort Pinellas and the waterborne transportation update. It looks like, one of the docks they're going to build is in this facility, so I'm sure that'll be incorporated in that and can be built at the same time, which will be good. Are you still going to be mooring the boats out on the south side of the causeway, or how you?
We're going to do temporary mooring, yes, and that'll be part of the design that we put together, is how we're going to build this, probably at least 4 different sections at a time, but we're going to temporarily moor them on the south side of the causeway, absolutely. And as far as you talked about the ferry, I was going to bring that up. Currently, the ferry docks right here. The new design is to bring the ferry closer to Beach Walk, so more people will use it, and we have kind of reserved a footprint for that ferry through Pinellas County, not Pinellas County, I'm sorry, PSTA, as they've applied for federal grants, and we're hoping to get those. So the timing of this fits. If we never got the grant, we could always just backfill the docks in that space, but we are intending to bring the ferry in there and use the federal grant money to do so.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, it's well past time to get this project moving and done, because the present configuration and the condition of it, it's time to fix it. But kind of off topic, but still, in my mind, I don't understand how we can be a city the size we are, have the boating public that we have, the volume of boating public that we have, and we not have a high and drive type facility in our city. I believe there's an opportunity for one at the Seminole Boat Dock area, and it could be an enterprise fund for the city and do it. But it just boggles my mind that a city of our size does not have a high and dry facility in it. So,
Councilmember Beckman.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. When I looked at this visual over the weekend as I prepared for the meeting, I drive through there every day. So I come from Sand Key through this area, and I bike it quite frequently. And I know that we have, we are looking towards multimodal transportation. So I'm just going to call the area where the pirate ship is, that bottleneck that is just horrific to move around in every conceivable way. As I look at that, if you move your finger down from the pirate ship where a hotel or apartment complex was demolished a year or so ago.
Back here?
Yep, right
The
there.
Sea Captain.
Sea Captain, whatever it was.
The old Sea Captain, yes.
Okay. What if, ideally, if everything were perfect, couldn't we move all of those tourist attraction boats around there and have that area be, an open, congregating area to free up the walkway that's in front of that pirate ship area right now?
Well, I can tell you that property has a development order, and they're going to build a hotel there right now, so I don't think that's possible.
There's no way to work with them or anything that's all, that land's been sold. I know that there's going to be building there because I've seen the signs, right?
Yeah.
So it's a done deal. That's not ours. We can't acquire it. We can't use it. And so we're stuck with this little bottleneck now still.
Well, we're looking at ways to address that. There is one way to build the docks over the water a little bit there to get some of that traffic off of the sidewalk, because it does queue up right there. So we're going to look at that, and we want to do that around the whole marina, because right now all the ticket booths and the vending locations, they're not permittable anymore. Those were built, under different county ordinances, so the city doesn't have the ability to rebuild those. So that's part of this work order too, is to address the vending for these charter boats out there, and we may do that inside the building. We may have central kiosk locations. A lot of the reservations are online now, but there's still a lot of walk-up, which we get from the beach, and that's the biggest concern from some of those people is the walk-up. So we'll address that. But the ticket booths and that atmosphere, which I like, is going to be gone because we can't rebuild that. And that's kind of the uniqueness of that marina, is having some of those. There's more than that needs to be there. We've got, we've turned a ticket booth in some cases into a little mini mart and an ATM and a lot of things that we really don't need on our dock. So we'll clean that up. But
Would there be the possibility of building some kind of an optional like ramp that would go over that walkway, so people who want to just get through it and not stop at those kiosks, or what do we call them, the vending and charter boats, that they could bypass it,
Well, that's all right of way for Coronado there, so, we're faced with a sidewalk and a seawall. So
Yeah.
that's all, I'm really building from the seawall outward, and I have that sidewalk there, which I have to address because there are utilities under there, so we'll deal with that. And then we'll turn to the east there, and that sidewalk that goes behind the marina building never really was that popular. It is now because the marina's an attraction. So people are coming there not just for the marina, they're coming there for the restaurants and just to walk.
Right.
It's something to see and do. But the right-of-way there along Coronado, I don't see that possible, to build something. There's just not the space to land, to get on, and you'd have to have a helix or some sort of a system to get people up and over, so
Right.
I'm not sure about
Okay.
that.
Well, good luck with that area. Do you think that's kind of the most challenging spot of the whole development?
Well, from a traffic crowd position, it's challenging, but no, it's not from the marina design, no. We have good water depth there in that area too, so the bigger boats need a turning basin and they need to be in the deeper water, so they're not gonna, I can't move them into somewhere where there's conflict. So I'll keep most of those there. The charter boats, there's a lot of mixing of vessels too, fishing and touring, so I'm gonna create slips, and so like boats will be in like areas, and that'll clean up some of the queuing issues when we do that there. Nobody's guaranteed to be exactly where they are now. There's nothing, and they all know that, and we're going to work with them. Part of this design work order is to work with the occupants of the marina, the tenants, and we've got several meet and greets with them, and we're going to find out what they need, what they want. We've done that already, so we're not reinventing the wheel. It's going to be disruptive, as Beach Walk was, and everybody will complain. But at the end of the day, it's like pain. You forgot what the pain felt like because now you're happy again, and we'll have that.
Thank you.
Yeah, the pain is my greatest concern. Just how we're gonna sequence this and still have businesses running. I mean, you mentioned Beach Walk. Imagine Clearwater, obviously, is affecting the downtown marina. The downtown marina affected Coachman Park. So, I'm all for this, as you've said, this is way overdue. I remember when Wade Trim was looking at this back in
2005, yes.
So, are they still doing this work?
Wade Trim?
Yes.
I don't think the original team is together anymore,
No,
but
they
they did
aren't.
not submit, and that was a
Okay.
big key piece to this, was putting the right team together to design this.
Okay. Consent?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, 10.1. Thank you, Mr. Chesney.
Thank you.
Authorize purchase orders to multiple vendors for the purchase of vehicle parts for heavy and light-duty city vehicles and equipment in the not-to-exceed amount of $1,500,000 for the term October 1, 2021 through September 30, 2022, pursuant to City Code of Ordinances, Section 2.5631A, single source, Section 2.5631B, micro purchases, and Section 2.5631C, piggyback, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Conson.
Good morning, Perry Conson, Fleet Manager. The Fleet Division is requesting authorization to purchase vehicle parts from various vendors for heavy and light-duty vehicles and equipment. Purchases will be obtained through the various methods that have been listed below. Any questions?
Any questions? Consent?
Yeah.
Thank you.
11.1.
Appoint one member to the Environmental Advisory Board with a term to expire October 31st, 2025. Council members, in your agenda pack, you had applications for Erica Escamilla, Dina Stanley, Sheila Sullivan, Nicholas West. Currently, Mr. Thomas, who is serving his first term, is interested and is able to be reappointed to serve.
It's great to see so many applications, and they were good. I think Mr. Thomas deserves another term.
Absolutely.
Personally, but
Yes.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. Item 11.2.
Appoint 2 members to the Municipal Code Enforcement Board with terms to expire October 31st, 2024, and appoint 1 member to fill the remainder of an unexpired term through October 31st, 2022. Council members, the current members, Nicole Bray and Carrie Ann Fuller Rainey, are serving unexpired terms and are able to be reappointed. The third appointment is Mr. Boris, who was recently appointed, and once he realized that he had to file a disclosure form, he did not feel comfortable filing an annual disclosure form and resigned. So that's the reason why this one has come back up. And so for your consideration, we do have a group of individuals, Michael Bergeron, Sarah Davis, Dwayne Schultz, James Staskill, Sheila Sullivan, and Robert Kenny.
Councilmember Beckman.
I have a couple of questions. So, I care a bunch about the advisory boards, and I'm currently doing some research on best practices, but I noticed that Ms. Fuller Rainey has had 3 absences in the last year. Can you explain that, or how many meetings did we actually have?
Now, Code Board does meet monthly, so this is a regularly standing board meeting.
Okay.
Ms. Rainey, I believe, just had some schedule conflicts. I know that she has been the board liaison, did reach out to Ms. Rainey and explain the situation, so I think we are on a path where she will be attending.
Okay. And then Ms. Bray chose not to update her application. I think I asked you this last time that.
So if they failed, if they're filing unexpired term, and she was appointed in 2020, they have the option of updating the form because it was so recent. Now, if it was a complete term, then yes, we would ask them and they will fill out another application.
So what's your pleasure? Councilmember Bunker.
I'd be fine with reappointing Nicole Bray. I really think we should replace Carrie Ann Fuller because of the missed meetings. And I would recommend Sheila Sullivan, who's got a unique zip code among the group, or James Staskill.
Councilmember Beckman.
I'm okay. I liked Sheila Sullivan's application. I like that she's younger. She doesn't have a zip code that's represented. I also like Sarah Davis. She's also younger and fully engaged in our community. She's a member of the Clearwater Urban Leadership Coalition. I know that she's very passionate about her community, and so I think those 2 women would be great to put on if we're looking at changing things rather than just reappointing, and then the third one is a new appointment.
Vice Mayor.
Now, I'm fine with reappointing the 2. The community, this board meets every month. They've got 7 members. So, it's not like they're in danger of not having a quorum if one person's missing. And I know she's missed 3, and as Ms. Call said, she's been educated a little bit about it, and there's been communication. So I don't have a burning desire to replace her. As far as the one opening, I can go any way, but I mean, I kind of like Mr. Bergeron. He's a retired firefighter, lost property control specialist. I like his background. I think he brings a good perspective to this board. But I can go almost anywhere on the third person. But I think we should reappoint the first 2.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Yeah, I was glad to see that we had so many applications. I think any one of them would good. I like James. He's been through the Clearwater Academy, and Sheila. But I don't think I'm really, I don't think I'm up for letting, the person go that has missed 3 meetings. I think we keep an eye on it and see what happens coming up, but if that becomes, it should be getting better, but if they, she had some schedule conflicts, I kind of agree. You've got some alternates as well, so.
Council, if Ms. Fuller is reappointed, just know that there is a process in the event that we do have an issue with her attendance again. The process is written now. I would work with the city manager if I can't have her attendance pick up again and have it consistent. Then I would work with the city manager to see if we need to present the item back on and ask her to resign.
Councilmember Beckman.
Do you have information about her attendance for the previous years that she's served?
I can get that.
Okay, maybe that would help on Thursday.
I don't think we have consensus on this, so we'll talk about it Thursday.
Okay.
12.1.
Amend Section 8.05 of the City Charter to provide for ranked choice voting for city council elections. Provide for a referendum to be held at the general election on March 15, 2022, and pass Ordinance 9512-21 on first reading. Council, I brought this to you at the last work session and meeting just to make you familiar with it. It is now in front of you for first reading. I'd like to talk specifically about the charter question. We'll get to that in just a second. But as you are aware, one of the issues with this is currently it's not able to be implemented. Sarasota has, at one of their recent council meetings, decided to move forward with litigation. They shortly after that may be reversing course, we don't know. It's coming back before them in November. So at this point, we still don't know whether there's going to be litigation to move this forward or not. And in my opinion, it will take a litigation to move this forward, whether it's by Sarasota or whether it's by some other group with standing. And at this point, Sarasota seems to be in the best position to have standing. If council does approve in this ordinance and then subsequently it is approved on referendum, then we would also have standing to move it forward. But at this point, our standing is questionable today. Once you approve the referendum, it may be a little more solid. So the ordinance lays out some whereas clauses as to why you would want to do this. And then specifically, we define that the city council members are elected at large and that candidates receiving the largest number of votes for that seat shall be elected until such time as ranked choice voting is able to be implemented under the necessary approvals and regulations. So our current system stays in place until such time as ranked choice voting is approved. We then define how ranked choice voting works. Do you have any, we've talked about that in the past. Do you have any questions about that? I didn't want to necessarily read those provisions to you. So then the issue is the question. So the title to the question is Implementation of Ranked Choice Voting for Election of City Council. You guys have dealt with referendum questions over the past. Not all of you, but some of you.
Everybody has.
You all have.
The landings.
That's right,
Yep.
the landings. So we have limited number of words for the title, and then we have 75 words for the body. You have a lot of words left to deal with here. I believe 12. I have to recheck. It may even be more than that. But what I have done is try to keep this question as simple as possible and explain the issue as much as possible. So the question that I propose is, shall City Charter Section 8.05 paren A be amended as provided in Ordinance 9512-21 to provide for candidates for City Council to be elected by the rank choice voting method, which provides for electors to rank candidates in order of preference, and for the candidates with the lowest number of votes to be eliminated until one candidate remains with the majority of votes. Pretty simple,
Simple is good.
but room for change if you want to make change.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, my question is, can we insert an explanation of how a candidate acquires a majority of votes? And so I thought something like, candidates with the lowest number of votes will be eliminated and their ballots, with an apostrophe at the end, remaining ranked votes will be redistributed to the remaining candidates until one candidate receives at least 50% of the votes.
You're not talking about the referendum question
Yes,
itself, though.
yeah.
That's
I
over the
think
limit.
you've added more words than we.
More than 12?
Yeah.
Well, we can work with something like that. If council, if you want to see something that specifically references, more specifically represents.
The redistribution of, right? Because it doesn't talk about
Yes,
any
we can add
redistribution.
something that describes the redistribution until a candidate reaches 50%. However, there are very rare circumstances under which a candidate may not get a clear 50. So that is, that could potentially happen, although it is very rare to occur.
Can you explain how that might happen?
I can't lay out the specific scenario for you, but my understanding is that it has actually happened in at least one jurisdiction. And I don't really know how you get to less than 50 when you keep eliminating people, unless you end up with, go ahead.
No. There was an example of that less than 50 result.
There was.
In an example that I gave the first time we talked about this. I don't know how frequently that or rare that would be, but I mean.
My understanding is it's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
You may have identified the only circumstance under which it's happened.
None of these are foolproof, I'm sorry.
They are not. They are not foolproof.
And does this also apply to the mayor race?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The mayor is a council member, so
All right.
it applies to all races. If the reason you see the reference to, actually the question, to city council is because the mayor is a council member and sits on council.
Other questions or comments?
Well, that language, the last sentence that says, until one candidate remains with a majority of votes, but that's true? You're telling me that that is true, right?
With a majority of votes.
Okay. Okay. Rather than with over 50%. We're going to, a
It
majority.
should almost always be over 50%, but it is possible.
Okay.
In a rare scenario, that you could have some number less than that. And actually, I am not sure exactly how that would happen.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that scenario occurred.
They would have to be 50-50.
But even then, someone would have one vote more. Someone's going to have one vote more than the lower, so I don't know how, unless somehow they drop votes. I don't know how that election happened that way.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Well, I mean, is this an exercise in futility at this point is one of my questions, just because the fact that it's not recognized in the state of Florida as a legal method. Now, if it were a legal method, it's better than what we have now. So we'll give you a definitive winner, except in a very rare case. But there's so many hoops that have to be jumped through for this to become accepted. First, the Secretary of State has to sign off and allow for it. After that, my understanding, the one company that actually has the software to do this tabulation has to be verified and certified by the state. Then we have, by the time it gets done, and again, it may be a rare, it may not happen, but I could see some people at the next level or 2 levels above us, government, Tallahassee, specifically looking at it and saying, we don't like this, so we're going to pass a law that says it's not allowable. So I just wonder, you know, are we going through an exercise for no reason? I mean, does it cost us money to put this referendum on the ballot?
It does not. You have an election at this point anyway. You'll spend a few dollars on translation, but it does not cost you anything more than your normal election would cost you beyond translating minimal costs.
And I mean, the other part, you know, and I make no bones about it, I still believe runoff's the way to go, but having conversations with city attorney, my understanding is here in Pinellas County, for us to even consider going to that method, the cards are stacked against us. The election supervisor's office is saying, well, I won't authorize a March election with a June runoff. So now you got to go to we would have to move our elections to an August election would be our main election, and then if there is a runoff, it would fall in November. Or give me the right terms, Pam, whatever.
Well, we can talk about that one in just a minute. Can we finish the conversation?
Well, let me finish where I was going. But then the other part is, the supervisor says, if we were going to go in that direction, we need to switch our elections to coincide with St. Pete in the off year of the state and federal elections, so that it doesn't create. That's the way you explained it to me, in my understanding. And
I have a correction on that.
Oh, okay.
So we can talk more about that
All right.
once we kind of wrap this.
So you want to approve the ballot language, that's really what you want to talk about right now.
I'd like you to talk about the ballot language and whether or not you want to move this referendum forward, and then we can kind of separate that separate piece if you don't mind, since that's not in this ordinance.
Well, we're not going to vote on this until Thursday. but
Right.
Is there any language on the referendum question? I understand Councilmember Beckman would like more clarifying language. I don't know if you can do that in 12 words or less.
I think I can.
I don't think that would be a bad idea.
And the clarifying language you're looking for is to the last sentence to clarify basically that the other ballots, the ones that are dropped, their second candidate moves up.
The
Yeah.
redistribution of those.
Yeah. I think we can
votes.
get some clarification on that.
But I'd rather you all wordsmith that than we do it up here on the dais.
Yes. Me too.
Councilmember Albritton and then Councilmember Bunker.
Well, I think we've clarified what we'd like to have language-wise, and so we'll await what you come back with us for. And I'll save my comments to when we discuss it again on the dais, having to do with this. I've got concerns. I mean, more I've looked into it. Anyway, I'll save those comments for later.
Councilmember Bunker and then Beckman.
I'd like to point out that when this was first brought up, The theory was that this coming race and every other race following it is going to be as crazy as the last one, with 12 candidates or more. And so far, we just have 2 candidates for 1 seat, and then David is running unopposed, as far as I'm aware.
At this point, yes, but people still have an opportunity to still file.
Until the middle of December.
And close of qualifying is December.
December 17th, so they've got time.
So we won't know until December 17th.
Well, and, yeah. Okay, Councilmember Beckman?
Well, I just wanted to ask Councilmember Albritton, why, so we have our work session to have full, robust discussions. Why, what are we waiting for Thursday night to discuss things? I mean,
Well, we may have, when we're talking about it to actually vote on it, we may have some other people here, is one. And we're actually talking now on the language, so for me to veer off and to talk about something else, I thought I'd just save it for the time when, you know, it's actually needed. It's just an opinion of mine.
okay.
And actually it's an explanation, but yeah, I think it's, another time would be better.
Other questions or comments at this time? Councilmember Beckman?
I get a little concerned about us spending the time to, you know, whoever initiated the discussion of changing our charter and our voting structure, and we had a lot of angst and discussion, and we had an expert come in, and we had multiple people come and speak before us, and here we are, kind of at the last minute to approve language and, you know, move things forward, and now we're like, wow, do we really want to do this? And I'm like, you know, we've had these discussions robustly months ago, and so for things to, I get a little worried about a reputation of swinging back and forth. You know, I'd like to have full discussions and be informed and move things, you know, give direction to our staff, and then not at the last minute change things up all of a sudden.
Can you give an example of where we have a reputation of swinging back and forth previously? Because that's a pretty blanket statement.
Well, you know, one thing that comes to mind is the discussions about Imagine Clearwater and what that referendum was for, and then, you know, are we going to have the library redeveloped, and is it going to be facing this way, and is it a band shell or an amphitheater, and just, to me, as a resident at that time, it was a lot of back and forth. And it is kind of shaping things as you go along.
Well, it's also completely different councils.
Yeah, but we were the same ones here in April, you know, who talked about this, or through the summer.
Yeah, but you're using the Imagine Clearwater as an example, and
But-
there were 3 different people up there.
I didn't mean us as this sitting council necessarily, I think as the city as a whole, that's all.
Former councils do not have the authority to bind future councils. So, as the economist, Mr. Keynes said, when the facts change, I reserve the ability to change my opinion. And I think that's what happened on Imagine Clearwater. So I would take exception with the fact that this council swings all over the place.
Okay.
But I think time has elapsed. I think there's been more research and everything else. I don't know where we'll go on Thursday with this. I felt like ranked choice voting was a reasonable compromise between what the vice mayor wanted and frankly what you wanted, which was not having primaries and generals. And that's the reason that I supported it. I thought it was a reasonable compromise. I do have similar concerns to what the vice mayor raised as far as the legislature. I think even if we get standing and the voters of Clearwater pass ranked choice voting and all the other tumblers fall into place, I question whether there wouldn't be a statutory limit put on ranked choice voting. So that is a concern to me. But we'll see. We'll make a decision on Thursday, one way or the other. And you're right, Councilmember Bunker, we don't know who's going to run this time around. I do know back in '01 we had huge fields. And there have been times where we've had 3 candidates. I don't think there's a perfect answer here is the honest response. I just don't think there's a perfect system. There certainly are additional costs if you go to a primary and a general. And then some of the timing issues with the supervisor of elections. I would really prefer keeping our elections in March. I think you get overwhelmed by the county, state, and federal elections if we move to the fall. So there's pros and cons. Councilmember Beckman.
So I did a little research as well, and we can bring this up and have a more fulsome discussion if people show up on Thursday as well. But in summary, over the last 7 election cycles, there were a total of 18 seats. 13 seats had elections where they were either unopposed or there were just 2 candidates. 5 seats had elections had more than 2 candidates, with 3 of those elections in 2020, our election, which was more of an anomaly. And if you include the current situation right now, with 1 seat unopposed and the other seat just 2, it becomes very clear that 2020 was an anomaly. And, we have much more of a problem with getting people to run. And, if at some point we want to have a real discussion about why that is, I think, that's an important discussion to have as well. For our democracy to work, we need people to run, and we need diverse people to run, diverse in gender, age, personal experience, all that stuff. And if those kinds of things are important to us, I think we need to have a discussion about that as well at some point. Or we can direct the Charter Review Committee to have that kind of a discussion.
Well, they have it every time.
Well, they didn't discuss ranked choice voting, though, I don't.
No, they
to my
didn't, but
knowledge.
they talk about, you did talk about ranked choice
Yeah,
voting.
ranked choice voting was a part of the presentation, and we
Dr.
talked about
Payne.
it for 2 days, 2 meetings with Dr. Payne. So yes.
I mean, I think I've been through 5 charter reviews over the years, and it's almost the same topics every time. And, sometimes it's about money, and, there's always been talks of districting, there's been talks of strong mayor, there's been talk of, we've talked about terms and changed terms in 2008 from 3 to 4. It's usually the same topics every time around. But at the end of the day, not much changes. And Pam, you've been through more than I have, so.
8 or 9. I'm finished though.
But is there much new ground that is tilled?
No, I would say there's changed emphasis in each one. This last time did focus a lot on forms of voting. It was part of the charge to the committee, I believe. So sometimes the emphasis is in one place and sometimes the emphasis is in another place, either by direction of the council or just by the members themselves. So there's usually a little bit different focus with each group. But it's the same topics.
Anything else at this time on 12.1? All right. Any questions on second readings 12.2 through 12.17? Anything else, Mr. Maxwell?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Aiken, anything else?
No, sir.
Councilmember Albritton wants to do his PSTA Forward Pinellas update on Thursday. Any new business to be brought forward? Councilmember Beckman.
I'd like to have a discussion about what the Parks and Rec strategic planning is going to look like. So I understand that's up for review and revision and update, and so I'd like to know what that timeline looks like, and will they be asking for any kind of direction or input from us? So I'd like to be on top of that.
They do, usually, and we can have Mr. Halios come and give that overview at a future work session.
Sure. Yeah, we have not developed the RFP to my knowledge yet, but we would certainly need to bring that to council as well as a purchase item.
Anything else? All right, we'll see everybody Thursday. We are adjourned.